Welcome back to the California Liberty Project. My name is Greg. This is your Weekend Liberty Project podcast, and I'm glad to have you back here. Today, we are joined by another excellent guest, and I have Osvaldo Maysonet from Triggerology. And we are going to be talking about a lot of gun-related issues, a lot of Second Amendment-related issues, and all things maybe self-defense and what have you. So with that, Osvaldo, or you go by Valdo.
Yep.
So Valdo, thank you very much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
I'm super glad to be with you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I am a Second Amendment instructor and Second Amendment advocate, of course, and I am here in a beautiful, formerly great Southern California, just like you are. And I've been doing this for about a little bit over 5 years, just teaching Second Amendment to the good people of California who are interested in, taking charge of their own safety, their own life, and exercise their constitutional rights.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So, what city, what metro area are you in?
In,
are you in
Los Angeles
San Diego?
County.
Oh, okay. In LA County.
Yeah.
All right. So first and foremost, anyone who listens to this conversation, and we do have a lot of listeners, burgeoning, a growing group of listeners in LA County and around Orange County in those environs. If you hear any of this stuff that you're interested in, at the end of the episode, we'll definitely give all of Valdo's contact information. Get in touch with him, certainly for training and for everything that Triggerology does.
Sure.
So, yeah, definitely keep that in mind. So, Valdo, there's a lot to talk about, right? In these topics, there's always a lot to talk about. Especially, we get Supreme Court decisions from time to time. Just had at least one big one. Mm-hmm. There's the state level stuff, and then there's also kind of the local stuff. Mm-hmm. Kind of where the rubber meets the road. Yep. So let me ask you, big kind of wide open question here. In your opinion, what do people need to know nowadays about the state of gun control here in California at the state level?
What people need to know is that we have power. And I want to start by saying that we have power. We have given it away for probably a couple of generations here in California, those who were here before me, but we can retake some of that power back. What's been happening, which I assume you've been here in California your whole life, Greg?
Not my whole life, but I've moved back and out, come back. My whole family's from here as well, so we're all Californians.
Gotcha. So I arrived here in California in 2003. Okay. And I have seen how steadily from there until now, what the typical response from the citizenry whenever something went wrong in society was look at government, right? Look at our elected officials and say, do something, right?
Right.
What is it what was their answer? Well, write stuff on paper, right? And each and every time that we as the citizenry went to the elected officials to put laws on paper, each one of those times, those rights, mainly Second Amendment rights, which we have tons of laws here in California, little by little, chipping away at those rights. However, we have the power through our vote to reclaim those rights back, to get those rights restored. So very timely. We have elections coming up. Look up who are your freedom-minded candidates. Reach out to them. Hey, what is your platform on the Second Amendment? If they don't have one, well, let's get one, please. And, so that way we can begin restoring rights here in California. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about gun control all the time, and it takes a number of different forms, right? To my mind, they're always talking about like a gun registry. That's always something that they're looking at.
Yep.
Then they actually put restrictions on what type of gun you can have. They're always talking about assault weapons. So if we stop right there, assault weapons, we know that's an idiotic term, you know, by people who want to take control of our natural rights that are enshrined or recognized in the Second Amendment. Of course, the Second Amendment doesn't give us those rights. They're inherent, right? We're born with them. But all that aside, assault weapons. Can you talk to us about what makes something an assault weapon here in California? You know, as you work with clients, as you do training and those sort of things. And how have our firearms, you know, the firearms that we're legally allowed to own in California, how have they changed or been regulated by these definitions of assault weapons that are always changing?
I'm so glad you bring that up. So as many of your listeners may recall, obviously, we've had a number of mass shootings, right? Whether it's here in California or in other states. The reason why these rifles are targeted, because by the way, what's typically named as an assault weapon is basically its cosmetic features. Some that are functional features, but mainly cosmetic features that allow for more better ergonomics in the ways that you may hold the semi-automatic rifle, more stability, which would improve accuracy. Some of these things are just by the political class are seen as targets, because if the person who committed the evil deed had one of these firearms that are outfitted with these features, then it must mean that these features are evil as well. So what the laws did, and these laws were not that it hasn't been that long. These laws were I think within the last less than 15 years for as far as for California, where now, you know, if your semi-automatic rifle has any of these features, and the features are hinged mainly on, does it have a pistol grip? Does it have they're all attachments, okay? Does it have a pistol grip? Does it have a foregrip?
Vertical foregrip?
Vertical foregrip, right. Does it have what is called a flash hider? Does it have a telescopic buttstock? Which all these things are just are purely meant to increase the ability for, you know, the user to be more accurate with the firearm, which you would think that it's a positive, right? Especially for the good people who are using it. If you happen to want to use it for self-defense, you are, you know, responsible for every round that comes out of that firearm. But no, the problem is the laws in the state of California. Typically, they what they do is anything that is firearm related is seen as negative first. Is seen as, you know, the criminal element first, and it's purely they're not seen as rights. So yeah, they came up with the term of assault weapon because it's catchy for people who do not like firearms in the hands of the common folk.
Yeah, I think assault weapon is just one of those terms that years ago it had been tested in focus groups. It's poll tested. It's one of those almost stupid dog whistles, you know, the term that the left loves to use, right? But it's like a Pavlovian response.
Correct.
If people hear assault weapon, they think must be bad. We must be talking about, it's a visceral reaction to it. Oh my gosh, it's like a M16, like Rambo, fully automatic.
Exactly.
Some converted automatic weapon, like a machine gun, right? And we've had this conversation, I say we, everyone in the media and normal people. How many times have we had this conversation where it's like, do you know what a semi-automatic rifle is? It's not that difficult. And it's like in the media and with some politicians up in Sacramento, there's zero interest in even understanding what it is that they want to legislate or regulate.
Correct.
Right?
There's zero interest, but what I will attribute to that zero interest is actually a little bit more nefarious. And I'll just use the word nefarious. Yeah. If you find each and every way possible to have the population dependent on you for XYZ, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They have to look at you for everything, and that gives you control, that gives you power. That's why we say that gun control is not about controlling guns, it's about controlling people. So the reason that's a perfect example why they go after these fantastic platforms of firearms that provide great accuracy, good capacity, right? If you decide to use it for your self-defense, because they are these almost enigmatic, right? Pieces of hardware that, just like you alluded to before, we are used to seeing them in action movies, only for the most part being used in very negative ways, right?
Yes.
In the most egregious, right, uses that you could give those tools.
Well, and sometimes killing bad guys, right? Killing like commie bad guys in the 80s, right? Right.
Yeah. So that's why they choose to focus on those, because, and I'm not the first person saying this, there are a lot of my peer Second Amendment advocates saying this. Once you focus into this one, you vilify this one, right? And their ultimate goal is to eradicate them from the general population, not from state agents, right?
Right.
Once that doesn't work, because evil people will still continue to use these tools in very evil ways, they can still go, oh, well, the assault weapon ban did not work. We're going now after the semi-automatic pistols. And then that.
Well, all we need are IRS agents carrying these, right? All we need are IRS agents carrying these, right? And everything will be fine in society. They have to, and if you hear closely,
if you are paying attention, because they have to defend themselves, because they are being targeted. Well, I'm a regular Joe, regular Jane. We get targeted.
Exactly.
And our life being our most prized possession, we have the right to defend our life with whatever tool we deem necessary.
That's right. Yeah, and I don't know, we can debate about this. People can have visceral reactions. Maybe they don't like guns. Oh, they're scary. They're so aggro or whatever. I don't care. People can have, if you drink a lot of soy, you can say, I don't really like that. That's fine. I don't care. But the whole thing is, it's very simple. So in the Second Amendment, you and I know, it says shall not be infringed.
Right.
So that is very clear. It doesn't say, well, you can't bring them in certain sensitive areas. Other than that, you're free. Or you need to get like a license, of course. If you want a handgun in Washington, D.C., that's the asterisk. Yeah, the government is supposed to be the one giving it. None of that is in the Second Amendment. It's very simple. It says shall not be infringed. You know it. I know it. 330 million people know it. Why do we go through this kind of kabuki theater, or this song and dance? And why do we pretend that there is more in the Second Amendment allowing for regulation of firearms than is actually there?
They prey on, and it's almost insulting that they insult the population, that you or I can't go to the founding documents and look at the text and the history and what it is that those words meant, right? The militia met the people. That is why they are mentioning
Yes.
the people just right after they mentioned the militia. Regulated.
Right. Well, and then they wrote it. They said it, right? George Mason, I think Madison, tons of the founding fathers basically said, yeah, this is what it is. The people is the militia. The people are the militia.
Correct.
Right? They said it all over the place in the 1780s.
Yeah, but you know, they take advantage of the fact that because our educational system has been co-opted, right, and taken over by leftists, that we no longer teach the Constitution in the right way and let the kids know who are in school age. Hey, and by the way, this Constitution, this document right here, there are a whole set of other documents that were actual, you know, recollections of the debate that was happening in those days in the Federalist Papers, right? And that is where the Constitution is based from. You know, the scholars that did all this amazing work of research of previous civilizations, grabbing from the good things that the other civilizations before the United States of America was instituted, right? And then they wanted to, okay, we need to remove this, we need to remove that. And in the Federalist Papers, you have all this amazing background to who were the regulators, what did regulated mean, which regulated, again, Second Amendment advocates like myself, we get tired. We are not going to get tired of saying this. Regulated back in those days meant in good working order, well stocked, all that stuff. It does not mean regulated by the government. They had just dished, right, the biggest empire of the day in Great Britain. And they were like, no, we need to be about freedom, not about regulating people's lives and behavior.
Well, I get the feeling that a lot of leftists and statists and whatnot, and maybe even just conventional thinkers, think regulated means, oh yeah, well that meant that they wanted the ATF to come door to door in the colonies, right? It's like, whoa. We didn't have any of those agencies. The idea would have been unthinkable. It was unthinkable to them. Even the Federalists, you mentioned Federalist Papers. Of course, the Anti-Federalists, no one really, this was not a super controversial point as far as retaining arms. There was a little bit of debate, but most of the Federalists and Anti-Federalists were on board with, okay, yeah, the people need to retain their arms so they can go and join and they can go form up into these militia. But every farmer, every landowner, every citizen has the right to own these arms. Who could take them? You know, we're not going to go to door and take them. We just had that in cities like Boston, you know, with the British occupation and whatnot. So obviously, the whole idea is so foreign that there would be, back in the 1780s, that they would have written in like, well, you can have weapons, but they have to be regulated by the government that we just essentially created. Right. You know, from a previous tyrannical government that was taking away weapons and stationing soldiers in your doorstep, right? It's incredible to me.
They placed that closing clause shall not be infringed because they understood that every system of government, its natural progression it ends in tyranny eventually. And so they had the amazing forethought to make sure that, hey, no, for when this happens, because it has happened in every civilization in history, our people are gonna need the means and tools at their disposition without permission from the government to retake their freedom. That is why it begins to secure the free state.
Yeah, and a free and feisty population who owns firearms and is willing to defend their lives and their property and their liberty is extremely important to upholding a constitutional republic. Yep. And so I look around at some of the great work that not only folks like you are doing, and I'm learning more about your work and what you do, but there are even people in inner cities as well that are fighting the good fight. And what I mean by that, think of people like Maj Touré, whose profile is rising. I think that what that dude is doing is awesome. That is really important work, because he's from Philadelphia. He's in the inner city, you know, and he works with people who live predominantly, I believe, in the inner city. I mean, he travels all around as well.
He does focus mainly in urban areas.
Yes, which I think is awesome, because the folks who live in those urban areas are the ones who are the most victimized by violent criminals, essentially, right? And so the best thing that people can do is take classes on the firearms, learn about safety, learn about some tactics, learn about your rights, and then own that firearm and protect your lives, your liberty, and your property where it needs to be protected, like the inner city. So I think I'm so glad to see work like what he's doing in the inner cities, many others as well, but education, right? And in connecting with what it is that makes us all Americans in our American DNA. And I don't mean that biologically, obviously. I mean it with our American rights, our American tradition.
You know, I like that you bring up the fact that our life should be, protected wherever we're at. And that's how this latest debate about sensitive places, which you also mentioned a bit ago, it's fascinating to me, because it's the height of privilege that the political class has the nerve of telling individuals or attempting to establish, policy into law. Oh, well, no, even if you jumped through the hoops that we established, right, to attain a concealed carry permit, oh, well, you're not going to be able to. No, you can't carry in these places, as if people as if these places are exempt from evil. That just doesn't make sense. No place is exempt from evil. We have seen plenty of very painful examples in recent years. So why do they want to take away that right from people? I'm going to tell you why. It is because, again, I alluded to it earlier. If you all of a sudden have the ability within you, in your person, to at least have a fighting chance, that does a great deal in flipping switches, turning on light bulbs in the minds of people. It's something that I like to tell my students. The Second Amendment is a gateway right to seeing your relationship with the government in a way that you probably have never seen it before.
Yes. Yeah.
Where the politicians, we've all heard it. Any of us who pay attention, even minimal attention to politicians love to say this, and you've probably seen me post about it. They love to say, my utmost, and my most important duty is to keep you safe. Nah, man, you cannot keep anyone safe. That's a promise that I know you're going to break, because you need, neither you nor your police force is gonna be in every place 24/7, where one of these crooks, somebody with evil in their mind and in their heart, is going to pick a target and victimize them. You're not gonna be there. So what's the alternative? The alternative needs to be, each and every single time, you need to get out of people's way. You need to remove these laws out of people's ways to, again, allow them, not even allow them, just get out of people's ways, ability.
Don't prevent them.
Yeah, don't institute laws that are not going to help them, because you're just in their way from being able to defend themselves.
And of course, those same politicians, those same demagogues, are the ones who are running around town, and they're making speeches, and maybe they're even campaigning. And for the most part, they have armed security, depending on what level of government we're talking about. So the irony is, they're running around, they've got a full security detail, and they're telling you, well, yeah,
paid for by your taxes.
These types of guns are dangerous. You can't have this. But all my guys back here, my security, these 6'6" guys that are fully kitted out. Well, they, I'm important, but we have sensitive places. Why don't we make government a sensitive place? Why don't they make it a sensitive place for themselves? Right. We know the answer, right?
Yeah, and they do, right? Because every place of government, they have no problem in grabbing our tax money to put in, security guards at every entrance, armed security guards, right? And X-ray machines and metal detectors, but they want to make a park a sensitive place that's just going to be guarded by a freaking sign.
Well, yeah, that's right. So we know what works. You know how we find out what works is we see what these stinking politicians do
right.
in their own homes. That's how you find out what works. Just like I talked about this last week, but it's kind of related, not directly, but with climate change, if we really want to know what's going on, or at least what the so-called elites think, we'll just look at where they're buying their property. Right. As soon as Obama sells off that beautiful $12 million mansion in a state that's probably 3 feet above the Atlantic Ocean on Martha's Vineyard, when he sells that off, then you better panic. If you live in Florida, you better freak out. But they're not selling. They're out there preaching this to you. They're not getting rid of their armed security. Nope. They're not selling their coastal retreats. So that's one way. It's almost like a heuristic that we can use to look at. We can say, okay, I might not know everything in the world, but I can see what the elites are doing. They want to run our lives. I can see how they're acting, and this probably works, or this is probably actually true. Yeah, it's right there. I mean, if they've got their fences, Nancy Pelosi's house, I'm sure it has a gate up there in Sacramento, or San Francisco, right? And full security details. So we know what's up with that.
Now, you juxtapose that with how, average, everyday people, especially here in California, how you have to live, where you go to shop, right? None of these people live the life that we lived. It's just, at the end of the day, it is what it is. They make enough money. They pay somebody to go wrangle up the things that they need from their expensive, stores. They don't go eat dinner where you eat dinner. They don't have to go wash their laundry at the local laundromat in the strip mall. They don't have to live life the way that you live it.
Yeah, that's right. Let me ask you, Valdo, getting back to assault weapons, because for anyone listening in the audience, anyone who finds the show in the future and watches or listens to this, we talk about assault weapons in California, and there are some modifications. We kind of mentioned those earlier, the pistol grip or traditional pistol grip without a paddle, versus like an old fashioned rifle grip, a flash suppressor. That's a no-no apparently. Right. The folding or the telescoping stock, shoulder stock, that vertical foregrip up front. But, we don't want to scare people off as well. An AR-15 or some of these semi-automatic rifles they're excellent weapons. Yes, they're fun to shoot out on the range. They're good for home defense in certain scenarios. So you can still get these so-called assault weapons, right? They're just semi-automatic rifles. You can still get them, right? And maybe we should encourage people to get some training or to look into these, because they are excellent weapons and they're much more accurate than a handgun. And that's one thing in a self-defense situation in your own, God forbid, in your own home or in your own neighborhood. You want to be accurate. You don't want bullets going through windows or bullets going through drywall, right? Talk to us a little bit about those concerns.
I'm super glad.
With accuracy.
I'm super glad you bring that up. So the first thing I like to address is, yes, you can still purchase semi-automatic rifles in the state of California. They're just going to look different from the rest, from the free states, from the type of configuration that the rifle is going to have. Still, the functionality is still the same. It's still going to be a semi-automatic rifle, which means after each pull of the trigger, only one round comes out, because you still have demagogues that say automatic. You still have people out there
Yeah.
using that type of language. Although, side note, I am a Second Amendment purist. I do believe people should be able to own fully automatic firearms. We did up until 1984 in the United States. Okay?
So do I.
Yeah,
no, I fully agree with you. Shall not be infringed.
Means shall not be infringed. Again, it's just mainly cosmetic features. So the way that you will receive a semi-automatic rifle in the state of California, as of right now, you cannot wrap around your thumb on where your shooting hand is gonna be at. So the main modification people have been doing are what's called as fin grips. They're
the fin,
horrible.
yeah.
Or severely canted pistol grips, where it's almost, it's very inefficient to wrap your thumb around, because because they talked about the pistol grip. If one of the modifications is shifting the grip severely, upwards in a crazy angle, no forward grip. All these things are just meant for allegedly, lowering the lethality. However, lethality on a semi-automatic rifle is wholly dependent on the ballistics of the round that it shoots. So you still have plenty of different calibers, many times more, just stronger than the 5.56/223 round. Okay, many hunting rifles that shoot fantastically, strong rounds that can do more damage. Again, hunting rifles, which are apparently okay, right, as long as it has a non aggressive looking frame, mainly made out of wood. Those are fine, but those shoot much larger rounds with harder impact and velocity, because they are meant to take down large game. But those are apparently okay. Sure. Those can still be used for evil deeds, but those are apparently okay. The regulations are just based on scare tactics, on somehow, some way making you feel like you are doing something wrong by acquiring one of these pieces of hardware. I call them defensive tools, to defend yourself. So,
and I think assault weapons, so-called, got that name. And again, I think they just got that stigma because they had the look. So it was something kind of like easy for politicians to grab onto. We talked about that earlier. Just like, okay, that's the stigma. That's the marker. Okay. Those are bad. So we're going to attack those almost as a proxy. It's easy to take out, like, okay, you can criticize any kind of firearm, but we're going to focus in on assault weapons. It's a big hazy distinction. And that becomes like this proxy, like a catch-all for going after weapons in general and firearms in general, right? But in the state of California, so just so everyone knows, because I'm not sure if everybody's a firearm enthusiast or whatnot, maybe yet. But we're limited. Unlike a lot of states, we're limited to a 10-round magazine. It's not a clip; it's a magazine. A lot of other states have no restrictions or higher restrictions. And of course, what that does in a self-defense situation, that greatly limits your opportunity to defend yourself. You've got to be much more accurate, which is a good thing, but it puts the pressure on you, especially if someone's being attacked or has to use the weapon, God forbid,
multiple
in a self-defense scenario.
That's a possibility.
Multiple assailants. That's right. So we're limited to 10 in this state, whether it's a semi-automatic rifle or a pistol. Correct.
I do want to bring up to the attention of the audience that may not be entirely familiar with what's been going on in terms of litigation. most of these infringements that I've been talking about with Greg, there are active lawsuits happening to declare all these state level laws as unconstitutional. Because again, these laws at the state level, they still have to pass muster with the United States Constitution. We are still a United States state, and we still we can't be putting laws on the books that violate the Constitution. So the magazine ban, there's an active lawsuit. The assault weapon ban, we're actually expecting a decision from Judge Benitez in the Southern District of San Diego very soon, by the end of the year, to once again declare that law as unconstitutional, as he had already in the past. The ammunition background ones, that's a lawsuit that's in the works too.
Yeah.
What's the other one? I already talked about the magazine. Yeah,
there are a lot.
There's a lot, man. Oh, I believe
there's
one, or there is going to be one about the 10-day waiting period. That's a big one. I can give you stories about that from the standpoint of my students, because I see a lot. With my students, I see the actual effects that these gun control laws have on the good people, because the bad people are not going to be affected, have never been affected by any of these laws. It's only the good people.
They don't worry so much about the law, do they, Osvaldo?
I don't know, man. There's something about being a criminal that they for some reason they do not want to, abide by these laws. It's only the good people. Go figure.
Yeah, if only these laws would apply as well to, the Congress people, to the Assembly, to the Senate, to them. If it would apply to them as well, like, well, that's the same thing for your security detail. Sorry, they don't have a permit. We need that piece of paper that says the government's allowing you to carry. Or, sorry, let me see that magazine. Only 10. I'm sorry, you can't have your 15-round mag.
I'm
sorry
so glad
about that.
You bring that up, because that's one of my major contentions, and I do not waste opportunity to bring up, because these laws, they always have carve-outs for people and special interest groups such as law enforcement, police officers, and sheriff department associations, where they lobby for their carve-outs so they can continue purchasing whatever firearm they want. Oh, the gun roster, the safe handgun roster in California, that's another one that there's a pending lawsuit. They always have these neat carve-outs where these infringements don't apply to certain groups of people, and it's mainly lawmakers, law enforcement officers, both on duty and retired. They can purchase whatever they want. A lot of times they sell them right forward, because for some reason, here's one infuriating example that I can give your audience, is that the safe handgun roster in California, the one that has severely limited the availability of handguns, this one right here, this is a very old version of Glock. It's the Gen 3. I think we are, Gen 5, or about to be in Gen 6.
Like the current Glock 43 or
there have
whatever
been many other versions of many different makes and models of firearms that improve in usability, accuracy, the ability to conceal it, again, for the good folk and the rest of the free states, and they enjoy an immense variety of firearms for many different purposes. But here in California, we're restricted because, again, some politician came up with the idea of, again, they responded to that call of do something. Okay, we're going to do this. But that's not helping the good people of California. Not one bit, not whatsoever. But the carve out means that the cop can literally go order a firearm from outside of the state of California, the federal firearm licensee receives it. The cop buys it, and they can turn around in a very short period of time and upsell that firearm to a someone who can afford it, oftentimes 2 times, 3 times the price, and that's okay. And the cop can make a handsome profit from selling that firearm. But then that means that the infringement creates a secondary market where only people who are of higher than average means financially wise, they can go and purchase the firearms that the rest of the population can't. How is that fair?
No, that's really interesting. I hadn't really heard that angle of it before. Kind of like one of these unintended consequences.
It is intended.
Or maybe it is intended. I don't even know.
100%.
Yeah. Let me ask you, in terms of, I haven't bought ammo recently, like in a few months, but where are we currently, according to your understanding, Valdo, in terms of ammo availability, the price? Of course, prices had skyrocketed for the past few years. Are things leveling off, or is it just impossible to find common ammo like 9mm or
Great
45
question. And that's
or what
another
have you?
thing that is affected by policy, both at the state level and federal level. Ammo is one thing that's affected, obviously, by the availability of some key components: brass, steel, copper, obviously gunpowder, and certain of those, some of those components we either manufacture here or we've been acquiring from other countries. So there are many factors that do affect the price and availability of ammunition. It has leveled off over the last, I would say last year. We did have some pretty bad runs that were associated first with riots, right? And the unrest that was happening after George Floyd.
The summer of George. Summer of love.
And COVID created a bad run. Obviously, there were many manufacturers and imports that were affected by the reaction to COVID. But it has leveled off. Now, the problem in the state of California is that we have this law that this was more of a recent law that stated that no matter what, each and every time that you purchase, that you want to purchase ammunition, that you have to pass a background check. Regardless of the amount of ammunition that you want to purchase, or you can literally purchase ammunition today, and if you go tomorrow, you again have to pass the background check. Never mind that you've already passed the background check to own the freaking firearm in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So again, the infringements, all they do is just mess with the ability of good people to maintain, first and foremost, maintain proficiency, because that is it. It is a perishable skill. Okay. You can remember really quickly the fundamentals, but it is a perishable skill. It is something that you definitely want to practice as often as you can. But if you throw in ammunition, background checks every single time that you buy it, and one of the things that we defeated recently, they want to throw in more taxes on ammunition too, penalizing the good people, right, for purchasing ammunition and to use it to, gun violence prevention programs, which I don't know how you prevent gun violence, because you've never been able to prevent crime as it is. So we deal with a lot now. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a lot coming at us, and I almost feel like in the state of California, I'm guessing you feel this way too, but they are always throwing so much at us and making it so expensive and so onerous to own firearms. It's almost, some people I think almost feel like it's impossible, or maybe they move here for work or whatever, and they're like, I don't even know what I'm allowed to do. I'd like to buy this new pistol, or I'd like to buy this new AR, but can I even? I think it's overwhelming for people, and that's by design. They want to make it crushingly difficult to practice our natural right, to engage in our natural right. They want to license it. Of course, people have noted that you don't need a license for free speech, although I'm sure parts of the left would love to have that. You don't need a license to practice your faith. Well, people on the left would probably like that as well. But yeah, these are all natural rights, in other words. And we don't have to ask permission to exercise natural rights. That's kind of the whole deal. They can't be given to us. We're born with them inherently from our Creator.
They want to condition people to... we are 1 or 2 generations away from kids actually believing that they have to ask, the government for permission to execute X, Y, Z. I hear this routinely. Is this legal? Is this legal? And that mindset of liberty is almost being eradicated, and that's sad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and it's really scary. It's really scary. People asking, not even thinking in terms of their natural rights, thinking in terms of positive rights or things that government gives us. Let me mention too. I mean, I should mention it. In terms of like Second Amendment and Bill of Rights jurisprudence. Of course, initially when written, the Bill of Rights applied to the national or the general government, right? And then through the years, various bits and pieces of the amendments had been incorporated to the states. So initially, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, initially they explicitly did not apply to the states whatsoever. And so that's a double-edged sword, right? In California, we would like something akin to the Second Amendment. We don't have it. Although it's kind of funny because how do you incorporate? People don't know that. How do you incorporate like parts of the First Amendment, parts of other amendments, certainly like the Third Amendment and stuff like that? Yeah, and then
people don't know that.
Yeah, and then we have to go years later. Yeah, like with either Heller or the McDonald case, and we just kind of wait and we get down on our knees and pray that the Supreme Court will decide to recognize our natural rights. Or we pray that there is incorporation. I think that's the key thing that people need to realize. Obviously, I want all the Bill of Rights to be in California's own constitution. And certainly most of the First Amendment is. But this is kind of where we get into some trouble because, well, states do have the rights to regulate some of these things. Although with everything else, it seems most of the Bill of Rights have been incorporated. So it's kind of a weird, it's almost like a weird gray area that people don't think about, when we talk about this issue. Because I love the Second Amendment, and I want one for the state of California too. That's what I'm saying.
You bring that up, and I've been meaning to do a deep dive on the history of the writing of the Constitution of the state of California and why did they skip over the Second Amendment. And there have been attempts in the very recent past with Senator Melissa Melendez from Riverside. She actually, I believe, before she was a senator, she was an assembly member, and she did put forward something attempting to put a version of the Second Amendment in the state constitution, but obviously being held by leftists, it didn't go anywhere. I have brought this up to current people who are in attempting to get into the assembly and the state senate. I have brought it up. I have advocated, and I'm like, hey, we need to work to put a version of the Second Amendment in the state constitution. Can you please help us out with that when you get into office? Because here's again the thing about what's our relationship with our government, right? Once you put in the Second Amendment into that constitution, you are, as government, you are making an admission that there are things that you are not apt for. And the government of the state of California, and no governments are apt to provide for our safety. That there should be something in writing that says, because we are not apt to provide you with your safety 24/7, 365, wherever you're at, we're good. This is getting enshrined right here that you have the ability, you have the innate right of defending yourself with the best tool, which happens to be a firearm.
Yes, and that we, the people, did
Correct.
not choose to give away this right. Right? I mean, if social contract theory means anything, if we're going to enforce some kind of social contract theory, which people can argue about that, not here today, but if it means anything, then it has to mean, I would put forth that it's got to mean that we choose what rights we are going to give up when we enter into this government, this different state
of the governed.
that we're in right now, right?
In our founding documents.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know about you, but I remove my consent. I declare, what Michael Scott on The Office. I declare that I have removed my consent. At a certain point, it's like, no, time out. Consent not given anymore. This is way out of whack. But we've got to decide what we're going to hand over to
It can't be the other way around.
And this is not.
No.
It can't be the other way around. Like the government kind of doles out, what we get to have as the serfs.
I have a really hard time with that. I'm gonna give you one quick example.
And part of this is living in reality. Recognizing reality. But give me your example.
When the George Floyd riots were happening, the LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva declared a curfew. And I remember vividly telling my wife, time out. I am a free citizen, homie. You are not going to tell me that at X time of the day, I need to be home. What?
Yes.
No.
Right. But it's for your safety, Valdo.
Exactly, right. As
right? And that's the thing. Those measures only affect the law-abiding. Right, so that means maybe people like you and me are going to think twice about going out to buy a loaf of bread at 11 p.m., right? Or baby formula.
Somebody who is just following orders. That's going to write you a citation.
Yes, or getting jumped by one of the, or even being assaulted by one of the criminals who's being allowed to run loose. Because I didn't see a whole lot of either LAPD or big police departments shutting down 300, 400 person wide riots. I saw a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of local police standing by and kind of letting it happen. Certainly in like liberal or leftist cities. And that's not to say that the individual officers were okay with that or that they wanted it to go that way. But honestly, I saw a lot of standing around. I saw a lot of businesses being torched during the summer of George, the summer of love. And I saw a lot of innocent people be assaulted. And I didn't see a whole lot of curfew enforcement with these 400 or 500 person riots in the streets. And it infuriated people like us, obviously.
The people who pay attention.
People who pay attention, people who value their liberty, and people who would never go out and assault anyone else, any other peaceful person. We're well armed. We're pretty well trained. I'm sure you're very well trained, and we try to keep that skill polished to some extent. And we are the people. Ironically, I think I would hope that you want to have more of in society. People who are armed, who want to take care of their neighbors, take care of their family, and mind their own business and be peaceful.
There you go. That's what I was looking for, and that's my segue right there. I want to make sure that your audience understands that being armed doesn't mean that you are seeking violence, and doesn't mean that you long for violence and the ability to take somebody's life. That is not something that I teach, certainly, and that is not something that I have experienced. And I want to take this opportunity to drive this point home, because you do hear this from the anti-Second Amendment side of the discourse, where they make those references to that, because you have this tool that was built for violence, for taking life, that you are seeking that. No, not at all. It's all a matter of having the tools. That there's this old adage: rather have it not need it than need it and not have it. And when you compare that
Yes.
to any
Yeah.
other type of, I love tools. I own so many tools. It's not even funny.
Yes.
Like my wife can probably be like, this guy. But I would much rather have something just there. I know how to use it, and you know, and it's just there. I mean, quick example: if you have some sort of short circuit or something, and a part of your house begins catching fire, you caught it. Wouldn't you rather have a fire extinguisher that's capable of taking that out rather than, oh, I'm just gonna run out of the house and call and you know, hope for the fire department to get here on time? No, you want to be prepared, you know, for in the event that something happens, you can take care of it, and then you call the whoever you decide to call, first responder or second responder, to come and help you mop up. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And oh, no, not at all. And what I found is that the more training that I receive and the more that I actually handle firearms, you get more familiar with the firearm and you realize, okay, what do you need to be cautious of? How do you need to be safe? And you realize, okay, it's not scary. It's not this unknown tool. It's like a very well-known tool. It's a simple piece of machinery, but you realize when and where you really need to be careful and what steps you need to take. But honestly, it's the same thing, same way that I would approach. I don't have a nail gun, but imagine if you had a nail gun if you work in roofing or construction, or those 3,000, 4,000 pound missiles that we drive around every day. It's the same thing. It's a very useful tool, but it can be very dangerous if it's misused or abused. And how is it different?
The one exception being, and it's not really an exception, but this is a tool that we need to reframe as this is a self-defense tool. I own all my tools are self-defense. Yeah. None of them have grown legs and gone to kill anyone. They have never gone off by themselves. You know, so they exist. Their whole existence is to defend myself and my family and my loved ones. That's what it is. And I'm not going to apologize for that, or I'm not going to be made to feel as if I am a bad person for wanting to be equipped, for wanting to have the ability to preserve my freedom, my peace. One word that I love that you brought up, right? No, if there's anybody who is first of all lazy, who wants to, for some reason, scoops me up, cases my house or whatever, and wants to get the things that I own. No, you're not going to do that without opposition, because that's one thing that I love to bring up to my students. The main reason why criminality occurs and continues to fester is because people who have evil intent, who are lazy, they who see others as, I'm going to get this from you, is because they feel like they can get away with it. They case you, they pick you as a target because they feel that they can get away with it. And once we get that into our brain housing group, and we can get more and more people to understand this and begin exercising the right that removes you from victimhood status to don't mess with me status, then we can see an actual progress in society and in this huge, wave of criminality that we've been experiencing. Is because people feel that they can get away with it.
Yes, that's right. And there are actually many, many steps we can take before we get to the point of having to use a firearm or a weapon in self-defense. And I prefer to take those too. I mean, I'm prepared. I'm sure you're prepared. But you know what? There are these little things that we can do to keep ourselves and our family safe. Like, unfortunately, locking the front door. It's something that a lot of people
Yeah.
forget about. Shut your garage door. We in California, we work here, we live here, or we have to be here for family reasons. Unfortunately, we are experiencing a major crime wave. So what that means is, you're going to have to be vigilant. You're going to have to lock your door. You're going to have to look out the window and look out after your neighbors, especially if they're elderly or whatever. But we take all those steps. One of the most important steps, though, is being armed and being a responsible firearm owner, in my opinion.
Take the steps that you deem necessary. Identify those steps that have roadblocks and advocate for yourself, such as the things that I have taken on myself, like, for example, advocating for the removal of all these hoops for people to get a concealed carry permit. I want, constitutional carry in all 50 states. But
yes,
it's imperative that you identify the roadblocks to you living free, living safe, and you hold the people accountable. If they are still in office, the people that place those roadblocks in place, like, hey, I need these roadblocks removed, or you're gonna be without a job. Which is one thing. Which is why I've been taking on these challenges of reaching out to the politicians or aspiring politicians to be like, hey, these laws in the books, they're not doing anything to help out the good people. We need to, for once, remove some of these laws on the books, because somehow they laws find their ways in the books, but it's so hard for them to find take them out.
Oh, yeah. Once they're on there, you can never get rid of them. People forget about it. And with every new law, we get less and less free. But the good news is, I think both you and I probably know several really good candidates coming in potentially to the California legislature. So I would encourage people to give some of my older episodes or some of my first episodes this summer a listen. Go out and find who it is that's going to support liberty and common sense in your area. Support that person. There are some great people running, some first timers that are trying to get into the legislature. So let's give them a boost, get them in. We're going to start voting in just a matter of weeks, right?
Mail-in ballots.
Get those ballots. So start voting, spread the word, and we might get some really good candidates in there, at least enough to break the Democratic supermajority. But Valdo, I want to honor your time. It's been a great conversation so far. Before we go, though, before we wrap up, why don't you tell any of the listeners here who are not familiar yet with your work and what it is you do? Why don't you give a website or what's your social media handles?
So
how can people get in contact with you?
Twitter, giving some pretty clever responses to the anti-Second Amendment left. You can just search Triggerology in there, and you'll see my logo, Triggerology, right there. That's where you can see me on Twitter. You can see me on Instagram. Same thing, Triggerology. Triggerology _FT for firearms training. And my website, triggerologyft.com. I will be rolling out merch here pretty soon. Some pretty awesome and based merchandise for those of you who are true followers, patriots, and of the Second Amendment, or you can sport some really nice and thought-provoking, I will say this, thought-provoking merchandise when you're out on the street. And
nice.
I am
Very
working
nice.
just like you on a Rumble account that's coming here pretty soon. Same thing, Triggerology.
Cool. Very cool.
Just I'll be out here. I keep on doing the work, training people on the exercise of their constitutional right of the Second Amendment, and fighting against the forces who want to eviscerate it. And that's nonstop. And I'm gonna keep on going until the work is done.
Awesome. So for anyone in LA County or Southern California, definitely check out Valdo's website and maybe get some training. And before we go, too, I want to mention also, I was working with Austin Peterson. So check out the AP for Liberty shop. You can get all kinds of really cool things. So for today's episode, for example, you can get some really cool keychains.
Nice.
Kind of M16 little style keychains. I think he has they're really cool for like $2.99 or something. My t-shirt, if you could see that. I got that at apforlibertyshop.com /Liberty Project. If you visit there, I think you might get a small discount. But yeah, apforlibertyshop.com /Liberty Project. Visit Triggerology, of course, on Instagram and social media. Visit California Liberty Project at California Liberty Project on Instagram. And Valdo, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise,
And I hope to talk to you again real soon.
The opportunity to be with you, and to the people, stay free, stay strong, good armed, and exercise your Second Amendment right. Make it normal, because being protected and keeping your own safety, your liberty, and your peace, that is normal. Do not ever apologize for it, and always push back to the people who are trying to take away your rights.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, man. Really appreciate your time.